Good afternoon. This is KBC Lunchtime News on this 25th day of November 2021. A busy Thursday morning, if you ask me. A lot in store, and the good thing is that we will be able to break it down for you. You can be part of this conversation via all our social media spaces. My name is BenTroy Njue. Welcome. President Uhuru Kenyatta has expressed Kenya's readiness to diversify its partnership in the ongoing revival and upgrading of the country's railway system. Speaking in Pretoria, South Africa, when he toured Transnet Engineering Company, a state-owned South African manufacturer of railway components including freight, wagons, locomotives and passenger coaches, President Kenyatta said the company could partner with Kenya Railways in the ongoing revamp of the country's railway infrastructure.
While touring the factory of a Transnet Engineering Company in Koidospor, Pretoria, on the final day of his 3-day state visit to South Africa, President Uhuru Kenyatta invited the South African farmer to help Kenya revamp its railway system.
Transnet can be a leading partner in working together with other African countries to restore their rail stock, and again, going back to what I said earlier, be a leader in helping the integration of our rail systems across the continent. And this is something that we look to working together with you and your team as we move forward.
My greatest lamentation is that we should have met when you started your term as the president of Kenya, because if that had happened, I'm sure we would have gone quite a long way. But you have assured me that you still have a couple of months, so there's a lot that we can do.
The head of state saying the enhanced partnership in the improvement of railway systems will boost the economies of other countries in the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community respectively. President Kenyatta emphasized that the development of a robust railway system would help fast-track the integration of the African continent by facilitating the movement of people, goods and services at affordable cost.
We need this interconnectivity to be able to facilitate that. And the only way, again, we can do that is by bringing the corporations that are responsible and charged with that mandate in our respective countries closer together to partner and to start developing these rail, road, sea and air linkages.
The president in the company of Transport CS, James Macharia, was accompanied in the tour by South African Public Enterprise Minister Pravin Jamnadas Godhana and Transnet Engineering CEO Ralph Mills. Kamchemenza for Lunchtime News.
Back home, Kilifi County Governor Amason Kingi, who is also the leader of PAMOJA African Alliance Party, says he will push for the economic growth of the coastal region. Kingi said the newly registered party would revive the collapsed economic activities in the region to make it at par with the rest of Kenya.
Speaking during a countrywide campaign to popularize the PAMOJA Alliance Party attended by more than 500 youths from Kilifi, Tana River, Taita Taveta and Kale counties, Governor Kingi, who is the party leader, said the region will only cooperate with political formations keen on championing the economic well-being of the region.
PA inasimamia vitu viwili, uchumi na makao, because hivi vitu viwili ndo donda sugu la mkazi wa pwani, uchumi na makao.
Kingi said that his party will decisively help in tackling the thorny issues of landlessness in the region. Kingi alleged the region has suffered economically since independence because it had been riding on the goodwill of leaders of political parties with roots in other regions.
We've seen industries being revived, but none from this region. We've seen billions being taken to revive certain crops. None from this region. Why? Because we have never championed We don't have a vehicle to champion our issues.
Cane farmers from Western Kenya sugar belt have decried the importation of illegal sugar from Uganda through Busia border, saying it was killing the already limping industry. Speaking in Busia after a regional meeting with cane farmers, National Secretary General of Kenya Association of Sugarcane and Allied Products, Peter Ondima, said that the government, through relevant ministries, should arrest the situation with immediate effect. The leaders accused law enforcement agencies and politicians whom they allege are behind this illegal business for their personal interest at the expense of poor farmers.
Ya kwamba hii sukari ambayo inatoka Uganda, serikali inapoteza ushuru, serikali katujio sukari inakuja kama imepimwa na Kenya Bureau of Standards, so we don't know kama if it is safe for human consumption. Kwa hivyo tunaomba serikali kupitia kwa county commissioner wasimamishe hii magendo ya sukari ambayo inaendelea katika Busia.
Moving on, residents in Samburu County can now breathe a sigh of relief after the county government commissioned a new and upgraded hospital at Archer's Post. The residents, however, decry lack of essential medicines.
According to the residents, the facility has brought health services to their doorsteps, given that they used to travel so far for the services.
Tunaenda mbali kutafuta madawa, mbali kama siri. Na siri ni mbali sana kwa hapa. Pali kama Latakwen ni huko ni mbali. Sasa tunashukuru sana serikali kwa sababu tunakuja tu hospitali wakati iko karibu. Tunasema sasa asante serikali ya government, county government, kwa sababu wametuletea hospitali hapa ndani ya Manyata.
The residents say that the area is snake invested and the health facility could not have come at a better time.
Unaambiwa ende ununue nje. Sasa hiyo ndio changamoto tuko nayo for now. Na pia madaktari unapata lineup ni refu, watu ni wachache. Madaktari ni wachache, so unapata lineup inakuwa refu.
Wale wamekuliwa na nyoka, hata kama wale wako na ugonjwa mgumu, tunapata tu madawa hapa. Na ile dawa kama hapana patikana inaenda daktari anaenda kuleta kutoka mbali Seroli.
And with the flow of the patients increasing every other day, drugs and medical supplies are becoming rare.
Community members to take advantage of this hospital and seek medical treatment. And to those who are expecting babies, expectant mothers, we offer free delivery services in this hospital. We don't charge a nickel for it. So let them take advantage instead of delivering at home that may pose a lot of risks to them and their babies and their families as well.
According to the locals, the new health facility is serving a large population, with residents of the neighboring Isiolo County also seeking services from the hospital. For Lunchtime News, I'm Ruth Wamboi.
Members of the Meru County Cooperative Societies have rejected the newly drafted Cooperative Bill 2021, terming it unfair. Speaking after a long indoor meeting in Meru town, the Meru County Cooperatives leaders said that they were against the devolvement of the cooperatives to county government. The leaders disapproved the said bill and called upon MPs to reject the same when it comes to Parliament.
We want to say we have gone through all the clauses and we are not happy with the bill, and we are saying it is not done well, and we are telling the task force to come back to the ground and pick the correct views of the cooperators.
Hii bill bila ililetwa, bila wamesema wamepeleka kwa public participation, ilikuwa kwa internet na wakutangaza kila mtu ajue kuna bill ambayo inakuja kuwa implemented. So watu hawakuwa na nafasi, na para wamepitia wote walikuwa na watu 15 less, few people Kwa hivyo haikupelekwa publicly ndio wananchi wajue waende kuparticipate vilivyo.
At about 12 minutes past the hour, we are taking a quick break, but when we come back, we still have more news. Do remember that the Devolution Conference is in its second day in Makueni, and also we'll be headed to Kasarani, where Wiper is holding its NDC. That plus much more, not forgetting business and sports. We'll be back in a brief.
Kama ni raha kuona mmoja, basi tafakari kuona wawili. Mie na pacha wangu tutaendesha meli ya Dira ya Magwiji kuanzia Jumamosi hii tarehe 27 mwezi Novemba katika KBC Channel 1. Usikose.
Do you have a news story to share with KBC? Get in touch swiftly on email newsroom@kbc.co.ke, call 0723-892-654 or 0734-780-124.
Welcome back, and straight away we head to Makueni, where the Devolution Conference is currently underway, and as you can see, the CJ Martha Koome is currently addressing the delegates and the congregation. Let's first of all listen in.
Fought for gender equality for many years, and then she became the deputy governor. I'm very proud of you. It is indeed an honor for me to address this annual Devolution Conference, which has become an important event in our calendar as a nation, because it is a time that we come together to interrogate ourselves and see what we have done as counties. And I congratulate all the counties for the great work you have done. Looking at the compendium that was shown to us and the little video, I am just in awe for what you have done for our people. Devolution is indeed one of the values and principles entrenched in our Constitution, and we at the judiciary have also mirrored our operations to the social transformation promise, which requires governments, both at the national and the county levels, to reach the most marginalized and vulnerable members of our communities. This is the spirit of devolution. To effectively deliver on this promise requires unhindered collaboration and coordination of all the actors, both in the national government and in the county governments, while recognizing the inherent nature of our independence. When I woke up this morning, I was a little discouraged because I was attacked for attending a meeting of intergovernmental stakeholder meeting to plan the preparedness of our institutions for the coming general elections. And when I woke up, I asked myself, now, the Judicial Service Act gives me the mandate to be the link for the judiciary with other government agencies and other arms of government. It also creates the National Council on the Administration of Justice, whose mandate is to collaborate and coordinate all the actors in the administration of justice to ensure that at the end of the day we render seamless services. So I ask myself, when I come now to meet politicians, what will they say about me? Then I told myself, we have to celebrate always this constitution that we have, which expresses the wishes of our people. And because our people were very clear that the independence of the judiciary should be underpinned in the constitution, it cannot just be taken away. When we were children, we used to suffer many sicknesses because of where we grew up. One of them was a skin rash we used to call mwale. If you met somebody who had mwale, they would infect you with mwale. So what I try to tell Kenyans is that independence of the judiciary is deep, is fundamental. It cannot be taken away simply because I have sat with other agencies of government, with the politicians. We are required by our constitution to collaborate and coordinate our affairs. No one can act in a silo and be able to deliver for the people. It is for that reason the people ask for a devolution of power to local levels so that there is participation by the people. And almost everywhere, the people wanted the state restructured. They wanted to have greater control of their own destiny and to be free to determine their choices of lifestyles and affairs. They wanted more communal forms of organizations, including the role of elders defined. That is critical to devolution. The people also wanted mechanisms to regain control over their destinies and to look at their future with their own eyes. When the Supreme Court considered the tenets of devolution in Advisory Opinion number 2 of 2013, the former Chief Justice, a son of this region, Kitui County, whom we celebrate also, stated, and I quote, Dr. Willy Mutunga, "Devolution is the anchor promise of the new constitution. It reverses the system of control and authority established by the colonial powers and continued by successive governments. The land devolution matters evidences the central place of devolution in the deconstruction of our state. Thus, Chapter 11 only approach would wrongly obscure the interlocking nature of devolution with other aspects and institutions of the Constitution, an element which is critical to the success." End of quote. I also had occasion to sit in a case that requested us to find that health services should be returned to the national government because there was total failure by the counties to deliver health to the people. And we interrogated ourselves as a bench of 3 judges in the Court of Appeal, asking ourselves, what is our role as a judiciary? And we were reminded of the principle of devolution, which is one of the principles that we should respect and uphold all the time. And although there was overwhelming persuasion that health should go back to the national government, we were also reminded a few counties are doing well in health. especially Makueni, was cited. And we had confidence to tell them health will remain an evolved function. And if you don't know how to do health, come to Makueni and see how it is done. So we in the judiciary uphold that principle and value of devolution. This conference is the embodiment of the constitutional premise of collaborative governance that is required by our Constitution in Article 6. The national anthem that we all sing and we have sung for many, many years also reinforces the values by calling us, we all, and with one accord, in one common bond, united, build this nation together. And this is what embodied me this morning, that nobody can expect the judiciary to remain alone and deliver justice. We must work with others, because indeed we work for others. We don't work for ourselves, we work for others. Turning to the theme of the conference, for a long time, we took our environment and the natural resources that God has granted us for granted, never thinking of them as limited resources we could use up, and so never developing innovations against making use of them without concerns about the future. Today, however, the fact that human activities are causing climate change is no longer deniable, and it is now widely accepted that through our actions, we can harm ourselves. We can also harm each other, and we can harm the future generations. This makes this year's theme of the annual Devolution Conference on Climate Change and the role of sub-national, namely county governments, in mitigating climate change a timely topic, given that the impact of climate change can already be felt in our country, in our communities, and in the ecosystems through increased incidence of droughts, floods, heat waves, to name just a few examples of the incidence of extreme weather events associated with climate change. The time for climate action is now, given the impact of these changed climate conditions to our people's ability to access water, the resulting low agricultural productivity, leading to food insecurity, negative impact on our people's health conditions, damage to critical infrastructure that disrupts our transport systems, water and sanitation infrastructure, to name just a few direct consequences of climate change. This makes it clear that we should move with speed to embrace measures that promote adaptation to our new reality and put in place policies and measures to mitigate the impact of climate change on our communities and ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, beyond the realm of personal ethics, which imputes a moral obligation on each one of us in our individual capacities to change our behaviors in response to environmental concerns, all state organs have an obligation to promote adaptation to this climate reality and adopt policies and measures to mitigate its impact on our people and future generations. Effective and equitable climate actions demand that mitigation and adaptation policy interventions in response to climate change be pursued on multiple scales of governance, the global, the national, and the sub-national levels. In fact, while the setting of mitigation standards is often made at the international and national levels, adaptation and mitigation activities are often implemented and have impact at local levels. Thus, it is at this county level of government that is best placed to implement actions intended to mitigate and adapt to climate change. A look at the assigned functions from the national and county governments and our constitution reveals that the county governments have a heavy responsibility of climate action due to the link between the functions assigned to the counties and the impact of the climate change. We face a future where there is a likelihood of the emergence of many life-threatening diseases because of climate change. Indeed, and many speakers before have spoken about the global pandemic, COVID-19, and the increased incidences of outbreaks of Ebola, Marburg virus, and other viruses are testament to this reality. It follows that the climate change is likely to have a drastic impact on healthcare, and this imposes an obligation on the county governments to strengthen their primary healthcare system as a response to these health impacts. In the sphere of agriculture, failed crop agricultural production and the effects of drought on animal husbandry will expose the country to food insecurity and increased risk of malnutrition, increased food prices, and incidences of starvation. As the level of government vested with the functional competence of agriculture, that includes crop and animal husbandry, the county governments ought to incorporate climate change mitigation and adaptation measures in our agricultural policies and legislations. And I'm very, very happy to note many counties have indeed enacted policies and legislations to that effect. In addition, water stress is expected to be worsened by climate change. This means we are headed to a future where our citizens and communities will be subjected to increased incidences of water scarcity, and this will be accompanied with the likelihood of the spread of waterborne diseases. Relevant to us is the fact that water and sanitation services are a functional competence of the county governments. Thus, the county executive and assemblies must be alive to these realities and begin to adopt and implement mitigation and adaptation measures before it gets too late. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, time is not on our side. We are running towards the possibility of being caught and prepared. Thus, both the national and county governments ought to make serious efforts to prepare for this looming threat to us and to our future generations. Thus, the key point to note is that the consequences of our failure to act now is likely to outweigh any considerations that is hindering us from adopting the requisite adaptation and mitigation measures to climate change. I will speak briefly about climate action and climate justice and link this to the vision we launched recently in the judiciary, which we call the social transformation through access to justice and our social justice jurisprudence. The Constitution on Article 10 articulates our foundational values and principles that include sustainable development, human dignity, human rights, and social justice. These values and principles and the rights that give effect to them are the rights to human dignity, social and economic rights, and the right to a clean and healthy environment, which have implication for duty bearers like county governments with respect to climate action. It also means that there is climate action which has a justice element. The social justice aspect of climate change include 4 elements. 1 is the principle of prevention. 2, intergenerational sustainability. 3, protection of the rights of the most vulnerable. And 4, fair participation, which has a procedural requirement to involve people for whom we make decisions to be part of those decision making. These 4 elements are enforceable as justiciable claims, and our courts are already developing jurisprudence to give effect to them. Thus, the county and the national governments should be on notice that they must take climate action obligation seriously. Lest you'll be brought to court and there will be findings against you for breach of the climate change. The first principle of an equitable response to climate change is prevention, effective and rapid action to avoid dangerous climate change. This means that county governments must act and be seen to take action to prevent climate change. Intergenerational climate change, the second principle demands that future generations should not inherit reduced life opportunities due to our unsustainable use of natural resources and degradation of essential eco and climatic systems. It is also made clear under Article 42 of our Constitution that we have to take sufficient action to prevent dangerous climate change. This is an obligation that our courts and tribunals have enforced in several instances, including in the Save Ramu case before the National Environmental Tribunal on building a coal-fired power plant in Lamu. The third principle is the obligation to access policy choices according to their impact in protecting the most vulnerable by 1, reducing exposure and increasing adaptive capacity of the most vulnerable communities and population groups, avoiding entrenching or exacerbating existing inequalities, for example, by creating disproportionate financial impacts on poor households. These principles speak to the social and economic rights and the right to human dignity of the vulnerable groups of persons within our communities. County governments have an obligation to ensure that these persons access socioeconomic goods like food, water, and health care as part of their mitigation and adaptation measures to ensure that these people's rights are not violated as a result of the impact of climate change with its manifestations in the form of drought, floods, pandemics, among others. In addition, the effect of climate adaptation and mitigation policies is a crucial issue in any discussion of the response to climate change. We should bear in mind always that the cost of adapting to climate change should not disproportionately fall on the poor and the vulnerable members of our society. Where the cost of adaptation and mitigation measures is not thought through carefully, they have the undesirable effect of increasing inequality in our society. Lastly, the entire policy development, implementation, and evaluation process related to climate change should involve active participation of stakeholders, with an emphasis on the fair participation of vulnerable and marginalized groups. Given our Constitution's strong commitment to the ethos of democratic participation in governance, whenever the national or county governments engage in climate action related to policy development, the citizens, including the vulnerable groups, must be involved, as it is only through their input that we can ensure that adaptation and mitigation policies are owned by the very people that it is going to affect. Indeed, it is given that climate change will affect food security, access to water, and health outcomes in our country. This is likely to see the living conditions of the vulnerable segment of our community worsen and exacerbate the already existing inequalities in our society. What this should tell us is that the most vulnerable need to be included in our decision-making efforts. This is an obligation that has been enforced by our High Court in Mohammed Ali Bandi case with respect to the Rapset project and in the Mui coal basin Koroko community case with respect to coal mining projects. In conclusion, I want to emphasize that our Constitution imposes a climate action obligation on all state actors, more so the national and the county governments, as evident from the Charter's insistence on sustainable development. In addition, we come to grips with the threats, dangers, and challenges of climate change and the required climate action. There is need to bear in mind the social justice imperative in the Constitution that requires that our mitigation and adaptation measures and policies protect the vulnerable, the excluded communities, and population groups among both the current and the future generations. I thank you for listening. I thank you for inviting me. Long live devolution, long live climate justice for all of us. Thank you.
Well said. That is the Chief Justice Martha Koome at the devolution conference live from Makueni, and she has clearly put it just like yesterday, where a lot has been said about climate change, talking about we need to work together to mitigate it because it's affecting all the sectors, and afforestation among behavioral change also being also factored in so that the country can realize its potential, and especially when it comes to conserving of the environment. Of course, she has also touched on protecting the most vulnerable in the community, and also hail, of course, the steps being taken by county governments to actualize devolution as enshrined in the Constitution. But also something out of what she was reading is she has responded to attacks by a section of politicians who, in regard to her role in the Intergovernmental Committee preparing for the 2022 poll, saying, of course, the judiciary being one arm of the government and also mandated by law via the National Council on Administration of Justice to ensure that all, including matters polls, there is free and fair elections come 2022. Of course, we are keeping our eyes peeled for that report. We have our crew there, the likes of Ed Kabasa and company, who will bring us a much comprehensive report on the day's event on the devolution conference. Well, from that we move on to business news, where cotton farmers in Busia County are appealing to the government to subsidize GMO cotton seeds ahead of the planting season. They say the high-yielding GMO variety is expensive as compared to other ordinary varieties being freely distributed. A kilo of GMO cotton seeds is retailing at 2,200 shillings.
According to the latest data by the Agriculture and Food Authority, AFR, Kenya's cotton production increased 16% last year on better quality seeds to 3,495 tons, despite a 45% drop in the acreage under cash crop. Farmers grew cotton on 9,998 hectares of land in 2020, down from 18,000 hectares the previous year. In 2020, the government distributed 24 tons of superior hybrid GMO cotton seeds for planting by farmers on about 10,000 acres. The average price of cotton seed per kilo fell to 48 shillings last year from 52 shillings in 2019. And today, farmers from Busia County are calling on the Ministry of Agriculture to offer the GMO cotton seeds ahead of the planting season. They say the ordinary cotton seeds being freely distributed have low yields as compared to the GMO cotton that matures faster, and the yield per acre is much higher.
Iko tofauti sana na ile variety ambayo tulikuwa tunaipanda mbeleni. Ile variety ambayo tulikuwa tunaipanda mbeleni ilikuwa ya kudiscourage wakulima. Lakini kwa kweli hii ukiangalia germination yake ni sawa sawa. Like last year germination yake ilikuwa kama almost 70%.
Tulikuwa tunafikiria kwamba serikali itatuletea mbegu ya BT. Ametuletea tena ile mbegu ya kitambo ambayo ukipanda hata saa hii unaweza pata ameweka mbegu 100 na ile inaweka hata mbegu 10 tu peke yake.
The farmers are appealing to the government to subsidize GMO cotton seeds or distribute the seeds on loan to attract more farmers. A kilo of GMO cotton is retailing at 2,200 shillings.
Kwa naomba serikali kama ingewezekana wangeleta hiyo BT cotton kwa loan. Yani BT cotton seeds kwa loan, alafu wapeane wakulima.
Serikali ingeleta hiyo mbegu, wakulima angepanda hii pamba kwa wingi sana, tungekuwa na pamba mingi sana katika jinari yetu ya Luanda.
The farmers from Teso South and Samia sub-counties noted that with the revival of cotton production in the area, they are now able to fend for their families.
Mimi nilifuna pamba mingi, 1 acre hii nikaweza kupanda pamba mingi, na kufuna pamba mingi na nikapata pesa mingi ambayo nikikompare hata na mahindi haifiki, hata na miwa haifiki kwa kilo.
Caroline Jinga for Lunchtime News.
Elsewhere, civil society organizations and the Regional Education Learning Initiative have rolled out a collaboration to establish a contextualized assessment framework that will evaluate the skills acquired in schools and how they help the youth secure jobs. Sam Mugasha, the investment principal at Imaginable Futures, say of the 1 million youths entering the job market every year, only 10% are absorbed.
The 3-year project will establish a systemic approach to provide a detailed map to identify points to be leveraged to improve the education system. The assessment of life skills and values in East Africa project is being piloted in Nambale, Busia County, involving 50 individuals and organizations, including students, teachers, policymakers and stakeholders in the education sector, with the aim of having a holistic approach towards solving emerging problems in the curriculum. So far, 600 school-going children have been assessed to promote value-based education for the youth and address systemic barriers that hinder their access to quality education.
We engage with stakeholders and partners across multiple backgrounds to gather rich data, insights and perspectives, and then we created a detailed map with key components of the given system as a way to identify the leverage points which have potential to yield positive impact.
According to Dr. Purity Ngina, a senior researcher in the 700 million shilling project, the data collected and analyzed will establish a ground for policy changes in the education sector that will reduce unemployability among the youth. She emphasized the need to adopt a 21st century learning approach in order to produce critical thinkers who will boost the regional economy.
Even as we start implementing the CBC, to think about the metrics. How do we assess competencies? But our pride as Alive is to grow the expertise in this sector.
Reporting for Lunchtime News, my name is Hibak Saeed.
In other news, the process of decommissioning Line 1, which has been the pipeline for transporting petroleum products from Mombasa to Nairobi, will be completed next month. Kenya Pipeline Company plans to upscale the capacity of Line 5, which was commissioned in the year 2018 to move more fuel products.
old line pipeline was commissioned in 1978 and had long outlived its 25-year design life. The 14-inch pipe was replaced with a 20-inch line 2 years ago.
One, it is of a higher capacity, 1 million liters per hour. The line 1 was 880,000 liters per hour. Number 2, when the line is new, the maintenance is not so much.
In the second phase of the project, Line 5's capacity will be raised to 1.8 million liters per hour. The success of Line 5 now paves the way for decommissioning of Line 1, which entails removing 41.6 million liters of oil products from the old line using water.
The line had Jet 1 and AGO or diesel products, so we have displaced 15 million liters of products. We are having a balance of almost 25 million liters of products remaining in the line.
To hasten the process, Kenya Pipeline Company is connecting a pump between the oil pipeline and the Mzima Springs line at Njue in Taita County.
The water pipeline and the product pipeline are 200 meters apart. So we are connecting the water pipeline to our product pipeline so that Mombasa Water can schedule supply of water directly into the line and displace products to Nairobi. That way it will be faster.
ICT Cabinet Secretary Joe Musheru is rallying the academia and the private sector to work closely with the government in updating or redesigning ICT courses to meet the needs of the job market. Musheru says the government is keen on closing the gap between the digital market requirements and courses being taught in institutions of higher learning to meet the growing demand for ICT skills. As Hibak Said narrates, 55% of jobs in Kenya by the year 2030 are expected to depend on digital skills, up to the current 25%.
The most critical resource that the country has and will ever have in the foreseeable future. Therefore, investing in them through the provision of relevant skills and training is of utmost importance. As they continue to face challenges and risks largely attributed to skills gaps, it is important for both government, academia, and the private sector to devise relevant programs that directly address the challenges they face with urgency. This includes collaboration to help academia update their curriculum to cater to the changing technological developments and market demand.
We are all aware that the skills developed in these programs are not adequate for the 21st centuries and specifically the industrial revolutions. This era is dominated by electronic and online activities that make ICT talent and digital skills integral in all educational, economic, social, and political engagement in the world today.
And from the world of sports, athletes drawn from Kenya's home of champions, ITEN, in Elgeyo-Marakwet County have asked the government to provide training facilities in a bid geared towards nurturing talent and promoting athletics. The athletes shared the sentiments during the ongoing Athletics Kenya Athletes Consultative Forum.
Than 500 athletes gathered for consultative forum, the largest group to have ever been witnessed since the sessions kicked off about 2 weeks ago. Athletes who took part in the forum pleaded with the government to provide training facilities.
Kila mtu anatrainia, unapata all over the world watu wanakuja hapa kutrain, lakini unapata watu wakifika hapa unapata facilities yenyewe penye accommodation yao iko sawa, juu manyumba iko sawa, lakini penye wanatrainia ni ngumu sana. Kwa ajili mtu analipa fare kwenda mpaka Eldoret kwenda kutrain.
Kamariny Stadium, which was the only public stadium in the area, was closed for renovations for about 5 years ago. The athletes have asked the government to step up efforts of refurbishing the stadium.
One of the facility in ITEN here is Kamariny. It has been there and we don't see any action being taken by the by the national government because it's a national government project. We really hope that because most of athletes used Kamariny and it has been, their results have been poor because we have to drive all the way to Eldoret.
Several time I saw the CS coming to the place and really we don't know what is happening. They should have to be faster so that they can assist that.
Authority is concerned. I think the concern is that the athletes would like to have this stadium very immediately accomplished so that they could be having at least a place where they could be able to do proper practice.
ITEN is famous for producing top cream long-distance runners. In 2019, it was awarded a heritage plaque by the global athletics governing body World Athletics as an ideal training place for long-distance running. Frederick Muki for Channel 1 Sports.
From athletics to tennis, where Kenya Table Tennis Association KTTA President Andrew Mudibo has been re-elected to the board of directors of the International Table Tennis Federation ITTF. He was elected during the sports body hybrid annual general meeting in Houston, America on Wednesday. Mudibo becomes the only current sports Kenyan administrator holding high positions in both the continental and world body at the same time. During the international elections, Kenya's Jane Pinto, the former president KTTA,